we're going to get started right in the nation's capital, okay? Where the commander-in-chief himself is not a fan of the NFL Commanders, evidently, at least the name for the Washington's football team. President Donald Trump is threatening to hold up a new stadium deal for the Commanders if the team does not go back to its old name, the Redskins, which is considered offensive to Native Americans. Trump also said Sunday that he wants Cleveland's baseball team to go back to his former team, the Indians. All right. The Washington Commanders and the Cleveland Guardians have had their current names since 2022, and both have stated that they have no plans to change them back. Trump obviously took to Truth Social on Sunday with this quote: "The Washington whatevers should immediately change their name back to the Washington Redskins football team. There is a big clamoring for this. Likewise, the Cleveland Indians, one of the 6 original baseball teams with a storied past. Our great Indian people in massive numbers want this to happen. Their heritage and prestige is systematically being taken away from them. Times are different now than they were 3 or 4 years ago. We are a country of passion and common sense. Owners, get it done." 3 exclamation points. Late in the day, the president followed up about the stadium deal. Quote, "My statement on the Washington Redskins has totally blown up, but only in a very positive way. I may put a restriction on them if they don't change the name back to the original Washington Redskins and get rid of the ridiculous moniker Washington Commanders. I won't make a deal for them to build a stadium in Washington. The team would be much more valuable, and the deal would be more exciting for everyone. Indians are being treated very unfairly. Make Indians great again." Ladies and gentlemen, this is the epitome of bull and the epitome of pettiness. Now, I'm not one that sits here, although I can be critical of the president. We all know how I feel about the Democratic Party and how they lost the election. They blew the election, and they tried to pull the country to the extreme left. And as a result, they've ravaged our nation, for crying out loud. Okay? We know how critical I can be about the Democratic Party. That ain't the focus of today's diatribe that I'm about to go in on. You've got a situation with Donald Trump. You don't have anything better to do? Of course you do. This is an evasive tactic. That's why I call BS on it, because it's an evasive tactic. Tariff wars, how's that working out? Yes, we've got pledges. We've got trillions of dollars in pledges from businesses and manufacturing throughout the United States of America. When's that going to come to fruition? We've got a border issue. No doubt he closed the border. Make no mistake about it. Immigration has improved in this country, whether we like it or not. But how he's going about it, how he's been going about it, particularly throughout the streets of America and especially in Los Angeles, you got folks being pulled over, law-abiding citizens, maybe not American citizens. They're here as migrants. They're here illegally, fine. Breaking no laws, working, paying taxes, but somehow, some way, I thought the criminal elements were going to be focused on. I thought we were going to get the criminals out of this country, not just go and have folks scared to show up to work, for crying out loud, who have disobeyed no laws. How about that? So we can sit there and we can have visions from 2 vantage points. Nevertheless, that's not as clean cut as everybody tries to make it out to be. There's a war between Russia and Ukraine that you promised to absolve from day one. That hasn't happened. There's the Israeli-Hamas conflict, where destruction is taking place in Gaza, where it's been reduced to rubble, where women and children are homeless, where we see and hear about children starving for bread. And all we hear from you is, hey, Israel, we need to stop this. Let's have a ceasefire. But that still is not completely resolved. There's a whole bunch of issues that are going on in the United States of America. There's those Epstein files that even the MAGA right has turned against Trump on, at least to some degree, not just MAGA right followers, podcasters, but also representatives on Capitol Hill who want the list to be released, with folks saying, hey, just show the list. Just show us who's on the list. You got people like me taking heat because I don't give a damn about the Epstein list, only because I'm thinking about politicians lying all the damn time. I'm thinking it was a campaign ploy, even though that's not something that Trump campaigned on. The MAGA right certainly did. And so you got folks from the deep state, as they say, that may have been a part of the Epstein files, and people may want to know who was that. Who was that was engaging in sex trafficking and other salacious and incendiary behavior with underage girls? And suddenly that list has not been revealed. contrary to what Pam Bondi told us, contrary to what Cash Patel told us, contrary to what Dan Bongino swore to us. So we got all of this going on. And you bring up the Redskins and their name from years ago? And the Commanders of the National Football League? Really? That's where we're going? Now, for those of you that don't understand the particulars about what's going on, I'm here to break it down for you because it's important that I point this out to you to make sure I get this out of the way, okay? Because it's important that you know this. The stadium, where RFK Stadium, where the Redskins used to play when they were the Redskins, there's a new stadium that Josh Harris, the owner of the Washington Commanders, who with his group purchased the Washington Commanders for over $6.5 billion less than 2 years ago. This man is looking to build a new stadium project on an old RFK site. The projected cost of it is expected to be valued at about $3.7 to $4 billion. $2.5 to $2.7 billion is what Josh Harris has pledged to spend himself. So after spending $6.5 billion to buy the franchise, he's willing to spend an additional $2.5 to $2.7 billion on a new stadium. They're looking for an additional $1 billion plus from the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. And these are where the problems lie. Because Trump's position is that, well, RFK Stadium, or the old RFK Stadium site, is federal land, federal property. What he's ignoring is that 15 days before he returned to office, former President Joe Biden signed legislation on his desk that enabled it to be transferred to a 99-year lease to the District of Columbia, which means that even though it's still federal property, the dominion belongs to the District of Columbia for the next 99 years. That's not stopping Trump, however, from bloviating and talking about what he's going to do. What is this about, ladies and gentlemen? This is about him appealing to his base. This is about him once again giving the impression that promises made, promises kept is something he stands on. That's what he's doing. But the real stuff that needs to be done, the real stuff that he needs to be doing, the real stuff that he actually has the power to have profound influence over, we ain't hearing enough about that. There's been critics all over the place about the big, beautiful bill. There's been critics all over the place about how he has gone about enforcing new immigration laws. There have been critics all over the place about the inordinate amount of executive orders he's handed down, with lawsuits all over the place, involving the federal courts, the local courts, ultimately to the Supreme Court. You got to wonder how long stuff is going to stay in place and what have you. And to debunk all of that, to veer our attention away from all of that, to get us focused on something else, this man has brought up the Washington Commanders. Really? Seriously? And you got people out here falling for the okie doke. I want to read some of the numbers here because, again, Washington, D.C. City Council, they have not refused Mayor Muriel Bowser's stadium funding request because she's requesting $1 billion, but it did pause formal approval, insisting on more scrutiny and legal clarity. While money is budgeted, the definitive go-ahead vote is still pending. The council did set aside about $1 billion in the 2026 budget for infrastructure costs related to the stadium development at RFK, but crucially did not formally authorize the funding terms tied to the stadium deal itself. Council leadership indicated that while they support financing infrastructure, they need to finalize a separate bill to make the stadium terms binding. The vote has been delayed, likely pushing the decision to the fall, okay? But there's more about this. Remember, RFK Stadium, 180-acre campus. Even though it remains federally owned, control shifted to that 99-year lease to the District of Columbia in January 2025. That means the city, through Events DC, by the way, will own and manage the property long-term while the federal government retains formal title. Joe Biden signed a land bill in a bill back on January 6th, 2025. Okay? By which time the Washington Commanders under Harris are set to become the operators of the new stadium, but they won't own the land itself. Those are the facts, okay? Let me give you some other facts, because all of this is relevant. This is why Trump gets to bloviate, but this is why it gets interesting, because even though he's just bloviating and he doesn't necessarily have the power to dictate anything, what he can do is use his prowess, use his cachet, use his popularity, at least in the eyes of some people, to point some things out. Remember, since Trump got into office, nearly 3,000 federal employees have been let go. Did y'all remember that? 58,500 confirmed job cuts, 76,000 buyouts, 149 planned reductions as of June 3rd, 2025. Ladies and gentlemen, Washington, D.C. is dominated by one industry: politics. It's a solo industry town. If you've got people losing their jobs, and I'm not saying all the jobs, the federal jobs, came from Washington, D.C. Of course, not all 300,000, but a lot of them came from D.C. Here's the reality, ladies and gentlemen. Who's going to patronize products? Who's going to patronize restaurants, stores and shops, venues, et cetera, et cetera? Who's going to do that? The city council is basically saying, how the hell can we justify coming up with $1 billion for a new stadium when all of these people have been laid off by the federal government or let go by the federal government? And by the way, just as an aside, I want to point out, I don't think Josh Harris did the right thing by responding publicly and talking about how the name would never be changed. Because you know Trump, all he's going to do is double down. My question to the president is why? Why are these frivolous issues so important to you? We were born at night, not last night. This is BS. And once again, it's a combination of two things. Him being petty and showing his prowess, him being evasive, I would say, to keep us steered away from the real issues, and also to get into a public battle with the NFL. Because obviously that draws attention. Last point, because I got to get to Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo, who's now going to be on the show again. I got to get to him. I want to state this point because I think this is very, very important to show y'all how senseless all of this is. It's much ado about nothing. It's something that Trump is making into something because evidently he doesn't want our attention on the real issues. Because there's a lot of projections, a lot of speculations, a lot of promises, but things that are finite in writing as a matter of law and what have you, even though the big, beautiful bill is something they're going to stand on because it preserves the 2017 tax cuts, let's be very, very clear. There's a lot that people have a problem with as it pertains to the big, beautiful deal. Republicans as well as members of MAGA. Of course, the Democrats as well. But as it pertains to football, did y'all know that last season, the Washington Commanders were helped immensely with the arrival of Jaden Daniels and the team's performance en route to a 12-5 season and a trip to the NFC title game, their first one since 1991? Did you know that last season the Commanders nearly surpassed the entire 2023 merchandise revenue by November thanks to Jaden Daniels' breakout season? Did you know that from the start of the 2024 NFL season through January, Jaden Daniels had the #1 selling jersey in all of sports, according to Fanatics? Did you know that sparked by Daniels, sales for Commanders merchandise skyrocketed 463% from 2023 to 2024 and increased 4,129% once Washington made the playoffs? What's the lesson in all of this, ladies and gentlemen? Star power. Nobody's thinking about the name. They don't have a problem with the Redskins being gone. They don't care that it's the Washington Commanders. They care that Jaden Daniels is their quarterback. Instead of guys like Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke, who were quarterbacking the Commanders the first 2 years since the name changed. That's why the popularity paled in comparison to when Jaden Daniels arrived, because Carson Wentz and Taylor Heineke were not Jaden Daniels. Star power is what sells. And because they got Jaden Daniels, and because they were knocking on the door of a Super Bowl berth, they mattered. Nobody's making noise about the Commanders being the Commanders other than the president, who made this into a separate issue because he sees an opportunity to capitalize it off of it with his base. Period. Don't fall for the okie doke. We got better things to do with our time. We got better things to do with our time. And damn it, Mr. President, so should you. This is ridiculous. The Native American community, many American Native Americans out there are clamoring for a return to the Redskins. In what world? Where the hell is your evidence about that? I mean, please.